$3 billion. That's the amount Publix supermarkets just committed to building out across North Carolina and Virginia, making it the single largest expansion investment in the company's 97-year history. More than 80 new stores, 2 massive distribution centers, a brand new regional headquarters, over 15,000 jobs. When a $50 billion employee-owned grocery chain places a bet that size outside its home turf, it is not a hunch. It is a declaration that the migration patterns reshaping America's economic geography have crossed a point of no return. Publix has always been a Southern institution, the kind of company that inspires near-religious devotion from its customers. Founded in 1930 in Lakeland, Florida, it grew into the largest employee-owned company in the United States, with roughly 260,000 workers who hold stock in the business. That ownership model has made Publix one of the most consistently profitable grocery chains in the country, with annual revenues exceeding $57 billion and a market valuation that rivals publicly traded competitors twice its size. For decades, the company's footprint hugged the Deep South, including Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and South Carolina. It entered North Carolina cautiously around 2014 and Virginia around 2017, tiptoeing north with a handful of stores. That era of caution is now over. Chief Executive Kevin Murphy laid out the scope of the plan during a company leadership event earlier this year. Murphy said that the company had been studying population trends across the mid-Atlantic for nearly a decade, and that the data now supported an aggressive acceleration. He described the commitment of $3 billion as a reflection of where Americans are choosing to live and where they will continue choosing to live for the next 20 years. The investment breaks down into roughly $1.4 billion for new store construction, $900 million for 2 distribution centers, one in the Triad region of North Carolina and one in the greater Richmond, Virginia corridor, and the remainder allocated to a regional headquarters campus, supply chain infrastructure, and technology systems. Construction on the first distribution center is expected to begin in late 2025, with the first wave of new stores opening by mid-2027. The numbers underneath this decision tell a story that extends far beyond groceries. North Carolina added more than 1.3 million residents over the past decade, making it one of the 5 fastest growing states in the country. The Raleigh-Durham metro alone gained over 300,000 people in that span, a growth rate of nearly 23%. Charlotte has been absorbing financial sector workers relocating from New York and New Jersey at a pace that has turned it into the second largest banking hub in America. Virginia, particularly the northern counties around Arlington and Loudoun, continues to benefit from the Federal Technology Corridor and Amazon's second headquarters, which is on track to bring 25,000 high-income jobs to the region. These are not temporary spikes. They represent structural realignments in where high-earning, high-spending households are planting roots. Publix is not the first major company to follow this population current, but it may be the most telling. Grocery chains are not speculative ventures. They do not open stores hoping people might show up. They open stores because the rooftops already exist, because the household density already justifies the square footage, and because the per capita income in a trade area already supports the margins. A grocery store is, in many ways, the ultimate confirmation that a migration wave is real. When Publix says it sees demand for 80-plus locations across 2 states, it is saying that hundreds of thousands of families have already moved, and that hundreds of thousands more are coming. That said, this expansion carries real risk, and analysts are not universally enthusiastic. North Carolina and Virginia are already among the most competitive grocery markets in the Southeast. Harris Teeter, which is owned by Kroger, has deep roots across both states. Food Lion, a subsidiary of Ahold Delhaize, operates more than 500 locations in the Carolinas and Virginia combined. Discount chains like Aldi and Lidl have been expanding aggressively into the same corridors Publix is targeting. Wegmans, another cult favorite grocer, has been pushing south from its mid-Atlantic base and already operates stores in Raleigh, Chapel Hill, and several Virginia markets. One retail analyst at Moody's noted earlier this year that the grocery sector in the southeastern United States is approaching saturation in several key metros, and that new entrants risk compressing margins for everyone. The question is not whether people are moving to these states, they clearly are, but whether there is enough incremental spending to justify $3 billion in new infrastructure when the existing players are already fighting for share. Publix's counter to that argument is its brand loyalty, which borders on fanaticism. The company consistently ranks at or near the top of customer satisfaction surveys, outperforming not just traditional grocers, but warehouse clubs and online retailers. Its deli and bakery operations are considered best in class in the industry, and the employee ownership model creates a service culture that competitors struggle to replicate. Murphy reportedly told investors that every Publix store that opened in North Carolina over the past 5 years exceeded its first-year revenue projections, some by as much as 30%. If that track record holds, the expansion math works comfortably. If it does not, if the novelty fades, or if consumers in these markets prove less loyal than their Florida counterparts, then Publix will have sunk billions into a market that punishes overcapacity. Number 17, meatloaf with tomato glaze and green beans. For the 15,000 people who will fill these new jobs, the impact is significant and immediate. Publix is known for paying above the grocery industry median, with starting wages for store associates currently averaging around $15.50 per hour, and the employee stock ownership plan adds a layer of wealth building that few retail employers offer. A full-time Publix employee who stays with the company for 10 years can accumulate stock holdings worth tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes more. In regions of North Carolina and Virginia, where the average household income still sits below the national median, places like Guilford County, Alamance County, and parts of the Shenandoah Valley, those jobs represent a meaningful economic uplift. The distribution centers alone are expected to create roughly 2,000 positions each, many of them in logistics and warehouse management roles that pay in the range of $45,000 to $65,000 annually. But there is a flip side for the communities absorbing this growth. More jobs and more investment also mean more demand for housing in markets that are already strained. Raleigh's median home price has risen more than 50% since 2019. Charlotte's housing inventory has been tight for 3 consecutive years. When a company the size of Publix commits to building distribution centers and a regional headquarters, it adds pressure to local housing and infrastructure in ways that can squeeze the same middle-class families the jobs are meant to help. Town councils in several North Carolina communities have already begun debating how to balance the tax revenue from new commercial construction against the cost of roads, water systems, and schools that follow rapid growth. That tension between the economic promise of corporate investment and the lived cost of expansion is the defining challenge of every fast-growing Sunbelt community right now. The broader pattern in here is unmistakable. Amazon built its second headquarters in Northern Virginia. Apple committed over $1 billion to a new campus in Research Triangle Park. Toyota recently selected North Carolina for a multi-billion-dollar battery manufacturing plant. Each of those decisions was driven by the same underlying math. People are moving south and southeast in enormous numbers. They are bringing their incomes and spending power with them, and the companies that serve them have no choice but to follow. Publix's announcement is simply the grocery aisle version of the same story, but in some ways it is the most visceral proof point of all. You can work remotely from anywhere. You can order from Amazon anywhere, but you buy your groceries where you live. And Publix just told the world that 80-plus communities worth of Americans now live in North Carolina and Virginia who were not there a decade ago. The next 12 to 18 months will determine whether this becomes a case study in visionary expansion or a cautionary tale about overreach. The first distribution center groundbreaking is expected before the end of 2025. The first new store should be open by 2027, and every quarter in between will be watched closely by Publix shareholders who are also its employees, by competitors recalculating their own plans, and by the millions of Americans who moved to these states believing they were building something